Welcome to part 1 of Theory and the Family. There are 2 other videos that you will need to watch at some point to get the whole picture. There are 6 theories, 2 per video, that we're going to go through together. And I'm just going to say this now, I'm going to say this lots throughout the 3 videos that I've created for you, that whenever you're writing an essay on theory and the family, or theory and education, which we'll move on to after Christmas, or theory and crime and deviance, or theory and beliefs — theory happens a lot throughout sociology — then you need to make sure you talk about all of the theories, not just the theory the question is asking you. Often in a sociological question they go, assess the usefulness of Marxism in our understanding of the family in contemporary British society. And then you go, oh, okay, I know about Marxism and write about Marxism, but that's the trick with getting good grades in sociology. You don't just write about Marxism, you talk about all of the theories. Hey, if it's a Marxism essay question, then you will definitely want to talk mainly about Marxism. The knowledge bit of each of your paragraphs should be about Marxism. But when you're evaluating, you should be comparing Marxism to the other theories so that you can have a broad understanding of the conversation that we're going to have in these 3 videos. In some ways, all I'm asking you to understand is what theory explains the family best, if any. And that would be a completely adequate response. None of them. They're all rubbish. Okay? So here we are, looking at all of those theories in one slide. Okay, so we've got functionalism and the new right, which is what we're going to talk about in this video. Then in the next video, you're going to talk about Marxism and feminism. And in the final video, we've got postmodernism and the personal life perspective. So there are 6 views on what is the job or role of the family within society. So you've got to be able to understand those 6 ideas and then play with them in basically saying which theory is best. Which theory gives us the most? Now, if you want my opinion right at the get-go, I think they all have a little bit to offer, and they all give us something a little bit different. I think that somebody like Anthony Giddens is probably more where I sit, and Anthony Giddens is kind of in between postmodernism and functionalism, I suppose, maybe a little bit of Marxism in there as well, in terms of he believes that there is a structure to society that we can do nothing about, but we can choose how we react to that structure. That's just my personal opinion. But here we've got 6 very clear ideas that you need to be able to play with. So here we have functionalism. Functionalism is the oldest theory. It's the sort of founding theory of sociology. It kind of views society as a big macro kind of situation. Therefore, we're kind of thinking about the institutions that make up society and wanting to study those institutions that make up society. So therefore, functionalism is very much interested in the family and what job the family has for society. As I've said already, functionalism is a consensus theory. It's very positive about how society works and thinks that society benefits everybody. If you don't buy into society, then you shouldn't really be part of society. It's very much a top-down theory, and that kind of means that society happens to you. You have no choice, you have no say in how you've turned out as an individual, you have no say in how society works. The institutions in society, things like the family, act on you, you turn out because of how they've acted on you. And I suppose the key word that we'd need to be aware of in this whole area of functionalism and the family would be socialisation. Socialisation is the most important word to a functionalist. The main job the family has in society is to teach the norms and values from one generation to the next and help you to become locked into that new society, because by being locked in, you benefit society as a whole.
Okay, so this might look a bit complicated, but it's not really. So functionalism in the middle. The three main sociologists are in yellow. If you're colourblind, they're normally the sort of bigger writing. George Murdoch, Talcott Parsons, Ronald Fletcher, and then the things that they do. Again, I've tried to help you with the orange words at the top left to remind you that when we're talking about theory, we're talking about what role or job does the family have in society. Now, thinking about Talcott Parsons, we're thinking very much here about how the world works. Okay, and when we're thinking about how the world works, we're thinking about in our society the jobs that we have and the jobs that we do, as far as the family is concerned, are socialisation. Very good, like that, that's really important. But also it's about stabilisation and the stabilisation of adult personalities. So socialisation, teaching of norms and values, how do I explain that? Okay, so if we think about a value that we have in British society, politeness. We like to be polite. Don't really think British people are that polite. I think we're quite bitchy, really. But on the surface of it, we come across as being quite polite. So a value would be politeness. A norm would be how does that politeness make us behave? So how does politeness make us behave? Well, we stand in queues. Yeah, we say please and thank yous. We hold doors open for people. You don't go to lessons for politeness. Yeah, we don't jump in front of queues. Yeah, that's a very important thing. Don't jump in front of queues. You get shouted out for that. But we don't go to lessons for those kind of things. But we do learn them by watching other people in our society, watching our parents, how our parents treat us, how our parents discipline us, and those kind of things. And therefore that socialisation process and those parents helping us help us to stabilise our personalities and make us think about bigger things rather than just being selfish gits ourselves. Talcott Parsons also goes on to talk about that the nuclear family is best, by far the nuclear family is best in this kind of situation. And having a nuclear family means two things: that we are going to hopefully be a geographically mobile workforce. So that kind of means that your parents can go, right, we're moving to Hull. I don't know why you'd want to move to Hull, but hey, there you go. We're moving to Hull, chuck you all in a car and you can go. Because our families work in that kind of nuclear way. We don't live in an extended family like they might do in other cultures and like they might do in other countries. But we also want to have a socially mobile workforce, that it is constantly evolving, that science and technology are constantly coming along to make our lives better and help everybody out. So these functionalists kind of have a very positive view of how society works. We'll learn later, and we've already learnt about Wilmot and Young and their March to Progress idea, that they believe that if we all work together, then society will be better for everybody, and everybody will benefit from society moving on. Okay, so if we look at now George Murdoch, George Murdoch is far more pragmatic. He doesn't really talk about the geographically mobile or socially mobile kind of workforce. He just talks about the jobs the family does. And there we have things like reproduction. That's what it should do. Shouldn't happen outside of a family, only inside of a family. Sex, again, the regulation of sexual desires and appetites, again, should only happen within a family. If you're going around sleeping with whoever you want to sleep with, whenever you want to sleep with them, that has a destabilising effect for society. Massive issue. The family is an economic unit. It provides for its family members. You should never have a family that's too big so that your family can't provide for it. So your family is this economic unit. And again, we have that lovely word, socialisation, the teaching of norms and values. That's the main role of the family within our world as far as a functionalist is concerned. Now we move on to the English sociologist Ronald Fletcher, and he really loves the welfare state. Why does he love the welfare state? Well, he kind of thinks that things like the NHS and education have taken jobs away from the family, so it allows the family to be more specialised. 300 years ago, your family would have done everything. It would have been your hospital, it would have been your school, it would have been your social services, it would have been your healthcare provider, everything. Yeah. Whereas today we have very separate institutions that play those roles. So the welfare state is brilliant because it allows the family to specialise on very specific things, mainly the socialisation of the young, yeah, and helping those kind of things happen within our society. Now, that does bring in a bit of stress, yeah, because if you're specialising on those things and you're not very good at them, then that can lead to the breakdown of family life, and he talks about that in terms of divorce. There's one area that I've not talked about and I've not written down on this slide, but it is the warm bath theory, because many people bring in this warm bath theory idea, and it is a functionalist idea rather than being necessarily any one person's idea. But the warm bath theory kind of implies that your family is a lovely, beautiful place, and when you come home from a hard day at work or a hard day at college, your family's there to love you unconditionally and soothe away all of your problems, because it's such a beautiful, lovely, positive place. And therefore the family, as far as a functionalist is concerned, is functional, essential to family life, and essential to social life. If your family, if not your family, but if society's family is working well, society will be healthy. If society's families don't work well, then society won't be healthy. So we have that lovely kind of idea together. So hopefully that makes functionalism make a bit more sense for you. Yeah. If I'm writing a paragraph on functionalism in an exam kind of situation, I kind of want to blend those ideas together in a paragraph and then evaluate it using another theory. If I'm doing an essay on functionalism, I want to separate out those three kind of ideas, and probably with an essay on functionalism I want to bring the new right in as a paragraph as well, but that would give me 4 nice paragraphs, and then I could evaluate it with 4 other theories. So the new right here is very much linked with functionalism, and what I mean by that is that functionalism is the old, as I talked about earlier in this slide, sort of Victorian idea of how the world works. The new right, or new right realism, as we're going to refer to it next year, the new right is kind of grown-up functionalism, contemporary functionalism. And they're pretty much saying that the nuclear family is best, much like the functionalists were saying nuclear family is best. But they do have this problem in our culture with benefits. And they kind of think that benefits are a bit of an issue, and that benefits create the underclass. I think it's worthwhile, whilst we're on the subject of right-wing and left-wing politics, which is where new right realism gets its ideas from, that we have a little look at what politics is like in Britain. That we have right-wing politics, which is primarily conservatism, yeah, that we can see there, conservatism, yeah, which is a kind of group of thoughts that I suppose in one way believe that the state should butt out of everybody's life. We shouldn't really have very high taxes. We shouldn't really have an interventionist government. We should let people decide what they want to do with their own money, and we should let the market decide everything. Is kind of where right-wing politics kind of is. Yeah, that we shouldn't intervene in terms of businesses. We should let them do what they want to do, how they want to do stuff, and then we can kind of sort out. So I suppose if we think about green technology, yeah, that fossil fuels are going to run out at some point. So we should let the market decide when the right point is for green cars and for solar panels and for all those kind of things. Yeah. To kick in, and then the market will sort of, as cars become cheaper, more people will buy them, and all of that kind of stuff. The market should decide, okay? Whereas left-wing politics, socialism, I suppose, and kind of green politics, yeah, what we've got here is more of an interventionist government, one which kind of says, I'm not sure we trust people to make common sense views, because we probably think that if we give them £1,000 right now, They're going to go out and spend it on booze and drugs and rock and roll, and they're not going to think about tomorrow. They're just going to think about today. So a kind of a socialist government, a left-wing government, wants to tax you more heavily and wants to put more things in place, wants to have a bigger government so that you are looked after in old age and for later in life. So if you make bad decisions, you've got somebody looking after you. And I suppose in some ways this might be hard for us to understand, a more socialist government, because we probably live in a family where we have a lovely mum and dad, and maybe we have grandparents and cousins and aunts and uncles, and quite a big family network that if we did fall on hard times, our family would probably help us and pitch in and help us. But there are quite a lot of people in our society that don't have a family and don't have anybody looking after them, and that's kind of where the government sort of kicks in. I suppose a really good example of that, being as it's its birthday this year, is the NHS. And the NHS is a good example of everybody pays a little bit of money into it, and not everybody is going to benefit from that, because some of you are going to live your lives and you're never going to have anything wrong with you, you're never going to have children, you're just going to wander through life brilliantly, then one day pop your clogs, thank you very much, job done. Yeah, and therefore you're not going to use the NHS necessarily. But if you've got rubbish eyes like I have, yeah, or you've got a congenital disease that you've had since you were naught, or you've got asthma, or you've got anything where a medical person has had to intervene in your life, then the NHS has helped lots. The NHS will have helped you lots, and you probably will get out more than you actually give in. And again, you've got professionals, and you don't have to worry about money when you walk through the door. A friend of mine recently had a baby in New York, and it cost her $58,000 to have that baby in New York, because she had a couple of complications along the way and she had to stay in for 4 or 5 days, and that's kind of scary, 58 grand. Now, I'm not saying I want to put a price on life, but I am saying that the NHS is flipping amazing. Yeah. So left-wing politics, bigger government looking after you for longer but intervening in your life more. Right-wing politics, not as big a government, trying to reduce the impact the government has on you in terms of tax and that kind of thing. So hopefully that diagram helps you understand a little bit more about politics in this country. So when we're thinking about the new right, as I've already said, we're thinking about the nuclear family is best, but we do need to have a little look, and we need to think about Britain is a bit broken. Okay, so why is Britain broken? What are the problems in our society? Well, pretty much, somebody like Charles Murray is saying that the underclass is getting too big. So in our country, we've got the upper class, we've got the middle class, we've got the lower class, and then underneath that, we've got the underclass. Now, the underclass is made up of people who are a drain, using his words, on our society. So people like travellers, people like people who've been unemployed for a very long time, probably never even had a job. We're probably thinking about the homeless. And he would argue that lone parent families often fall into this, working class lone parent families often fall into this underclass where they've not got a job, they have children, those children don't get a job, there's nobody modelling how to be a fine, upstanding member of society, and therefore they rely on benefits. And that benefit system that we have in this country allows these people to build up this dependency culture, where it's easier for them to be on benefits rather than go out and get a real job, which is what they want, because if you get a real job you pay taxes help run the country, and that's a lovely good thing. Okay, and then, again, an example of that is an anecdotal example, but I'm sure you can think of things as well. While my wife was training to be an occupational therapist, a friend of hers was training as well. She was unemployed beforehand. She used the unemployment system very well to get onto a degree, and so she could do that degree while being unemployed, being a single parent mum. But then when she got her first paycheck, she was only 50 quid a month better off on the being an OT than she was being on benefits. Yeah, so that's a real draw into that kind of dependency culture. So Murray is arguing that if the underclass gets too big, lone parent families being the largest part of the underclass, then Britain has problems, because those kind of children from those lone parent families are running feral across the countryside, maybe not the countryside, maybe towns and cities, causing problems, burning bins, taking drugs, getting drunk, causing problems in schools in terms of discipline issues, bringing their drug use and alcohol abuse into schools, just making it miserable for everybody, in that kind of thing. So Murray wants to limit the amount of benefits so that limits the amount of lone parent families, so that makes Britain less broken. And I think if we look at our government at the moment, Mr. Johnson and his chums, then we can see that conservatism at the moment is kind of looking to Charles Murray's ideas in the cutting of benefits and the making sure that dependency culture doesn't necessarily exist. Now, I know the coronavirus pandemic has got in the way of that agenda maybe, but I think if we look forward for the next 1 or 2 years from 2020, then we might see that agenda coming back and coming back and coming back, of cutting benefits so that Britain will be less broken.
Okay, so for our summary for part 1 of theory, we've just really been looking at consensus theory. So the first theory that came about in sociology was functionalism, and massively functionalists are interested in this idea of how do we fit people into society. They're not interested about the individual, they're not interested about what you think, they want to understand how society works. Therefore we call this theory a macro theory or a top-down theory, where we're looking at how society fits together, niches together. In some ways, functionalists kind of see all of the institutions in society fitting together in this kind of human body analogy that we might talk about later, where education might be the lungs, your family might be the heart, and so everything needs everything else to work, and they want to study society like a biologist or a doctor might study a body. So they see society working in this sort of system biological kind of way. So therefore they're really interested in this idea of socialisation, and they absolutely think the nuclear family is best. The new right are kind of like modern functionalists, I suppose. So they kind of take on board the majority of things that functionalists say, especially the nuclear family is best. But they do have this theme that runs through new right thinking, right real thinking, which is the underclass. And they're worried that if that underclass gets too big, and the underclass is primarily lone parent families on benefits, then that gives too many problems to society. So what we should do is curb those benefits so we don't have such a big underclass, and therefore we don't have so many lone parent families, we're not paying out so much money in benefits, and therefore society will benefit from all of those kind of things. Remember, there are 2 more parts to this conversation, 4 more theories in part 2 and part 3, and whenever you're writing an essay on theory, you don't just talk about the theory the question is asking you, you need to evaluate that theory using all of the other ideas in the 3 videos that we have here.